Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is here to talk about a painful subject, PTSD. Nicole Conley of Barton served 3 tours of duty in Iraq. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And I know you hear this often, and I don't know if it means anything to you, but really thank you for your service and thank you for what you've been through. I know you've been on the show before, and I think you were probably brave in combat, and you know what? I consider you a very brave person to come back on the show to talk about the struggles that you and many other veterans, and as you said, sometimes non-veterans also suffer from PTSD.
Just about anybody could suffer from PTSD, and I decided to come talk to you because yes, I am going through some painful things, but if it could help just one person suffering to know they're not alone, that would be absolutely the best.
Right. You know, you were telling me that you have been going through the struggles. Do you have people that you're able to reach out to so you're I guess would be safe?
Oh, I have a support group. I have my husband, Matt, my best friend Christina, and my parents. And then I have other friends like Brian and Trish. Without them, I would not still be here.
Right.
And it's still hard.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. Who are you and how did you get here?
Well, I would still consider myself a retransitioning veteran into the civilian life. I have not made a good transition of it. It's hard. And most people here don't understand because they've never been in a life or death, kill or be killed situation. So currently I try to find things to occupy myself, something that makes me feel worth, like I'm giving back, like
this.
Yeah, like this.
So you're a graduate of Lake Region?
Lake Region, and then I finally finished my bachelor's degree in psychology through Linden State.
You must have had a lot to offer the class.
I had a lot to deal with. Having to tell professors, I've had too much for today, I have to go home.
Right.
They were very understanding. I did all my work, but they were very understanding about having to be in the classroom setting surrounded by essentially children.
Right. Yeah, people who hadn't really lived yet for the most part.
Yeah.
So how did your journey from Lake Region, well, what year did you graduate?
2001.
And, so it was the year of the terrorist attacks. Did that influence you?
Yes. I said, that is not going to happen to my family.
Right. And you're from a military family?
I am.
And is your father still in the military?
Nope, he's retired now. 35 years, I think.
Right.
33 or 35 years active in National Guard.
And his name is?
John Conley.
Right. And so you enlisted in the Army?
Yes. Yes, I did.
And what were you thinking that you'd be doing when you enlisted?
Well, I had these lofty thoughts of being like counter intel or a spy or something because, do I look like a spy? No, I don't think so. I thought it'd be fun. But when I got to MEPS, the place where you sign up and depart from, and you had to do all your medical testing, they're like, you can be a traffic control person, you could do something with chemicals, or you could be nuclear something or other,
right.
Or you could be an MP. I'm like, well, that sounds like fun. Let's do that.
And how tall are you?
My license says 5'3".
Right. And this photo, You are with your father.
Yes.
You met up in
Kuwait. Camp
and
Wolf, yes.
You look like you look like you're with your father, and it looks like you're almost, as you said before, playing soldier. But
Playing dress up.
You look like you're 14, maybe 12. How did you, after being so small and being an MP, you must have had to prove yourself?
Oh my goodness. Oh, I couldn't get help to do anything. So when I was loading my 50 cal onto my gun truck,
Right.
50 cal its body alone is like 80 pounds, and the barrel, I believe, is another.
Right.
I don't remember. But having it all together, lugging it to my truck, putting it on the hood, getting on the hood because I'm short, and then picking it up, putting it on the top of the truck, and then getting up there and mounting my gun. After people saw me do that a couple times, they're like, Conley, let me help you. Nah, I got it. I didn't need your help before. No, I'm good.
I don't know you well, but you've been on my show, and I've followed you on internet.
That could be dangerous.
I suspect you earned a whole lot of respect, though.
I might be little, but I'm mean.
Right. So you went to basic training.
Yeah.
And when did you end up deploying overseas?
I graduated in May of 03, and I deployed in October of 03.
Right. Were you like back in the World War II generation? A lot of those folks had never actually been out of, like, say, Orleans County.
Well, I was born in Germany, so my dad was stationed in Germany, so I'm half German.
Right. So you'd been out.
I've seen the world a couple times.
And so they didn't know what they were getting in. Did you have any idea what you were getting yourself into, or what the country was getting you into?
I pictured that we were going to hell. With like fire and brimstone and everything hot and scary. And it kind of turned out that way.
Yeah.
I pictured hell, and I kind of got hell.
Right. Yeah, it was hot, wasn't it?
Yes. The first deployment I was there was record-breaking heat. It said, we had a thermometer that said 160 or 158. It was a record-breaking summer. Even the locals were dying of heat. It's like sticking your face in an oven and being pounded in the face by heat. You got to keep the water just constantly going, or you're going to pass out.
And you had equipment on some.
Oh yes. The full, the vest, the plates, all my ammo, my Kevlar, whatever else, accoutrements for that day.
And as we mentioned, you actually met up with your father in, was it Kuwait?
Yes, Kuwait.
How did that feel to run into Dad there or meet up with him?
Actually, he volunteered to go while I was still in basic training.
Right.
So I hadn't seen him for like 9 months by the time I got to see him.
Right.
So it'd been like a huge chunk of time that I hadn't seen my dad, and I'm a daddy's girl, so...
Right.
And then trying to gear up to go across the berm, it was mind-blowing.
Was basic training and all the other training you got, did that really prepare you?
Yes and no. It's really hard. There's certain things you can remember to do if you think there's an IED nearby. It's called 5 and 25, where you check 5 meters within the truck and then 25 meters to make sure there's not a daisy chain or a secondary device hidden anywhere. You can drill that as much as you want, but until you actually know there's somebody trying to blow you up, the pucker factor is so different.
Well, I know we talked beforehand that you're distantly related to Darren Perrin from WCAX. Darren actually has been on my show, and he just spent a short while, I believe it was Afghanistan, on assignment, and he was saying about, he said it's an interesting thing is the IEDs, he said, you're so prepared for it. He said just out of the short time he was there, he came back and he was still in that mode of you look at things.
Everything. Bridges, underpasses. You go this way so nobody's dropping anything, nobody's blowing up something onto your head.
Right. And you're a woman, and you know a lot of people think, well, you never experienced combat, because women in the old days, they were back behind the front lines. But here's the deal: there's the front lines, but you know where's the?
There are no lines,
right.
really, especially if they're playing guerrilla warfare with you. There are no lines.
Yeah. So you have, when you say guerrilla warfare, so you and Vietnam veterans actually have that in common. They were fighting in the jungles, and you were fighting in the
desert.
And so, what did a day-to-day life look like for you?
Most days we had a mission to go on, whether it be to patrol certain roads for safety reasons, because other convoys were going to come through. Providing convoy safety, providing commander safety, teaching Iraqi police how to be a policeman,
right.
and the safety procedures, and it could have varied from a checkpoint to teaching an Iraqi police soldier how to clear his weapon properly so he doesn't shoot us or his buddy.
Did they want the help?
The lower guys wanted help. The upper guys, at one point in time, there's a lot of corruption. So at one point in time, they were calling out bumper numbers for trucks to be blown up. So I'd say the lower guys wanted us to help, but the upper guys were either being stiff-armed through threats to their family or money.
Right.
Politics.
Right.
It's just a mess.
I know you once told me, and I think you told me before the show, is you went there thinking that you were there. Well, I'll let you say, why did you think you were going there?
I thought I was going there to find weapons of mass destruction. I thought I was going there to stop terrorists from getting my family.
Right.
The people that I love. That's the reason why I joined.
And what did you, and you said after a while, though, you came to different realization.
Well, when you come back and you see the media, and you can't always trust media, they like to, the worst thing gets the best viewership. Absolutely. So they never showed any of the good things we did. So that was terrible. And then coming back and reading and getting different inputs and influences and different, just I guess, data,
right.
I realized, wow, we didn't go over there for WMDs. We went over there for oil.
Right. And did you you went back 2 more tours. Had you already come to that conclusion even when you went back your second and third times that you knew you were being, well, manipulated?
Not as completely as after. I had started to get the idea, but it wasn't a full-fledged, like, oh my goodness, this is actually how it is, until probably after the second one.
Right. You know, the other thing I recall you telling me is, and I've had veterans of other wars from World War II and up through, is a lot of people who've never experienced combat, such as myself, I've never served a day in the military, is a lot of people think when you're in the combat zone, and particularly in combat, that you're there saying, hey, I'm fighting for my country. And who are you really fighting for at that moment when you're in harm's way? I think you said really for each other.
Definitely for each other, for the guys in your truck, the guys in the other trucks in your convoy. You become family because that's all you have.
Yeah, even even when you've come to the realization, started coming to the realization that, you might not be there for the right reasons, you still
do it for your guys.
Right.
Yeah, you do it for your squad because they're your family.
Right. Yeah. So
you can't always share everything that goes on over there with people at home,
right?
So they don't worry. But with your guys, you're all there, so it's incredibly bonding.
Right. Yeah, that's what I understand. Were you? Some people might say, well, you can't. I've heard this debate. You can't mix men and women in the military or in combat. It doesn't work.
That's crap.
Were you looked at as a woman or were you looked at as a soldier?
I believe I was looked at as a soldier.
Right. And so did your second and third tours, did those look the same as the first, or did you...
The second one was way, way worse. Tragedies happening to our squad, our company, people dying. Lots more people died on my second tour than had previously and then after. And I think that's really the one that got me.
And as I've talked to you about my friend Winston Carbonell, he's been on the show. He was a career military man who is, he's suffered long years with PTSD, and he would tell you this is the way to handle it, is talking about it. 'Cause he says that, you think about all your friends, and he was a platoon leader, and he said, with him, he had the burden of knowing he led all these people to their deaths.
That's a big burden, right? Yeah.
Because he was an old man in Vietnam. He was in his 30s. Oh. And so he was an old timer. Okay. And so what was your third tour like?
I operated communications. Going through subsequent tours, I got hurt.
Right.
Things didn't want to heal. Repetitive use injuries. So I was actually in the TOC running communications. So I wasn't just worried about my squad. I was worried about my whole company, which could have been around 200 people, give or take.
So you were communicating. Now, where would you have been?
I was in the military, you call it the TOC. It's just a basic centralized operations center. Let's go with it. Tactical operations center. There we go.
So you could hear everything going on?
I could hear everything, see everything, and I would call for help if our guys needed help.
So that even had a burden,
Yeah, I wasn't just worried about my squad. I was worried about the whole company. Yeah, and it was my responsibility to send information up to get help.
And third tour's over with, and you go back to where?
Actually, I was medically evacuated from the third tour. PTSD.
PTSD. What finally caught up to you?
I was talking to a psychiatrist from the Air Force, and they finally saw something that no one else had saw, and they decided I probably wasn't safe to carry a rifle at that moment in time.
In a medically...
Yeah.
So how were the people... Did you see a difference in the people of Iraq from your first tour to your third tour? Like, were they... were the civilians... Did they change to you?
Well, you never knew who to trust.
Right.
Like I said, there was Iraqi police officials calling out hits on us. So it was so much easier just to hate everybody instead of trying to figure out who's trying to kill me and who's actually a good guy, it was just easier to hate them all and just sort it out later.
So you, so where did you arrive back to in the United States?
I believe it was Walter Reed, and then they shipped us via C-130, it's a regular aircraft that the military uses, back to Fort Hood.
Right. And so did you have to receive treatment there?
Yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So how long were you in the military after?
Total, it was just a couple days shy of 6 years.
Right. And then you ended up, so how long were you back in the United States before you were discharged?
I went to a wounded warrior soldier unit to receive help, medical, mental, and I was there for almost a year. So I had to keep extending my contract until the med board was completed for them to decide whether or not they broke me or not, or how bad.
Right. So what year did you arrive? Well, what year did you get discharged?
09. Sorry.
Yeah. And you, did you come right back here?
No, I was in South Carolina for almost a year, and then I decided I had enough of large groupings of people, and I came home.
Right. What was it like to come back to Vermont's Northeast Kingdom after having experienced what you experienced?
It was very boring.
Right.
Oh, so boring. I went and got my motorcycle's license, bought a motorcycle. So that was fun in a very probably not safe way. I don't know, I just started trying to do things that I'd always wanted to do, but hadn't gotten a chance to.
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting you say that because do you know that's actually from what I've read and interviewed World War II veterans, when they came home, because they can't say they loved war, but the adrenaline rush of war that's when all the race car driving began, including in this area. They used to have a racetrack right over where North Country High School is now, right by the Legion. It was only there a year or two, but they popped up all over the Northeast Kingdom, these jalopy racers, and a lot of them were World War II veterans. Can you understand where they were coming from?
Yes.
The adrenaline rush?
Yes. Well, it actually, war changes the chemistry of your brain.
Okay. Right.
So your levels here for anxiety and adrenaline. So life is, mundane and boring down here. So to find something, motorcycles, I almost talked my dad into bungee jumping. Him being a vet too, he understands the need for adrenaline.
So is that a good thing? Is it therapy, or is it,
I understood it to be therapy, but as long as your head was screwed on tight that time.
Right. So then we also spoke in the past about, though, you might still have some of your high school friends, but you're on a different...
Yeah, I don't really have my high school friends anymore.
Right.
No.
Why do you think that is? Just the passage of time, or do you think you operate totally on different levels?
Both. But I did actually go to high school with my friends Brian and Trish. He's former law enforcement, and he went through some stuff. And my friend Trish is just awesome, and I can talk to her about everything, and she understands me, and she can just look at me and know if I need a hug. Right. She's great.
Is there a particular struggle about being a woman veteran, combat veteran? As in, do you have any people you know, you have your friends there that are a great source of support, but are there other women around here who have been to actual combats, like say in your case, Baghdad, who know exactly what you're going through? Like, for example, there's plenty of men here who've experienced it, but can you talk to them just as well as any woman?
No. Most women have never been into anything even remotely similar, except for my friend Christina, like I mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah, because as you were saying, PTSD, it doesn't have to come in, you know, it doesn't have to be part of combat. It can be a different kind of combat, including domestic violence.
Yes.
So, because a lot of times we think...
Or even violence in the workplace.
Right. So what are the services like for people with PTSD in the Northeast Kingdom, or do you have to travel?
Well, with COVID, there's been a lot of video chat, actually.
Okay.
So I can see my therapist via video conference. I see all my doctors, actually, since the COVID hit, that I see them through video conference.
Does that work for you?
It's okay.
Right. Now, I was speaking to another veteran. I can't recall if it was Iraq or Afghanistan, but he was saying the interesting thing is he went through different counselors.
Yes.
And he said it's interesting. The one that helped him the most and had really got him focused had never been in the military, and he said that was interesting. And he said it just clicked with her.
Well, I've had a similar... I've been through many therapists as well.
Right.
I take little pieces of each of their theories that they're trying to work with and basically have made a Frankenstein, and I'm trying to run with that and use that.
Can you explain what is PTSD?
Well, for me, it is always being at a heightened state of readiness, knowing where all the doors and exits are, where people might be possibly coming in, where snipers could be located, just being ready to be shot at a given moment's notice.
And even though intellectually you know that's not going to happen, it's still just...
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So does that come in the version... Does it also come in flashbacks? I hear some veterans talk about flashbacks.
Flashbacks, but for some reason, smell mainly trigger those. For some odd reason.
Like, what might that be?
Diesel smell.
And how have you learned to cope?
By desensitization.
Right.
Trying to immerse myself and in people, like a group of people, and forcing myself to handle it. It's very tiring.
But it's kind of probably like, wouldn't it have been easier for you to, when I asked you if you wanted to come back on, wouldn't it have been easier for you to say no?
Yes and no. Recently, I have heard of another veteran who completed suicide.
Right.
And I wanted to come talk to you in the off chance that somebody else, another person who's hurting,
right,
knows that they're not alone and that they don't complete it themselves. But you can't come back from that.
And a lot of times people are surprised when they do complete suicide. But because a lot of times they suffer silently.
Yeah.
Right. And I recently had a person say to me, you know, as I said, I haven't served in the military. I've led a pretty, uneventful life, but I've interviewed enough veterans. I mean, dozens and dozens and dozens, probably in the hundreds. And they've said, well, yeah, but I don't understand. They said, I have a friend who was in combat in either Iraq or Afghanistan, and they appear so well adjusted, and it doesn't seem to bother them. First of all, do you think you can always tell if somebody's suffering silently?
No. It becomes, it's a mask. Not always,
right.
but it's a mask. So people will leave you alone, essentially. And even with my awesome support group, my support people, I too have been struggling with issues more so as of recently, and it's hard to ask for help.
Right.
It's hard. You're wired against asking for help.
Right. And, you know, 'cause, I suspect there are some people, you know, who they've learned to compartmentalize things and just be able to go on. I've spoken to a number of people who said it was their job, that's what they did, and but more often than not, especially the World War II generation, a lot of people say, well, those people, they came home, they didn't have any such thing called PTSD, and they moved on. No, they didn't.
They weren't allowed to talk about it because they didn't want to appear weak.
Right, and men particularly, because men were expected to, you know, not show emotion. And I've actually had I actually had family members say, well, we did our best. When they tried to talk about it, we moved them on to different topics. And because that was the way that it was done back then. I'm going to tell you, I would say 65 to 70% of the combat World War II veterans I have interviewed, these elderly men, who most of them are gone now, cried to me.
Yes.
And they will tell you it was the most wonderful thing. I have gotten thank you from many family members of World War II veterans, because it was such a release for them.
Cathartic.
To actually talk about it. But
when they were steering them away from talking about
right.
their history, that sounds like that was probably a very detrimental thing to do when these guys were actually trying to open up.
Right. And, you know, then the thing is some of them, you know, they got into the bottle.
Yeah, self-medicating.
Right.
Yeah.
And I just interviewed a woman, just turned 100, and she was talking about her husband. Well, her brother was killed, shot down over Germany, and but then her husband came home, and for years, it just all of a sudden he'd wake up and run downstairs and say, "Get out of the house! Get out of the house!" And she talked about the struggles that she felt, and so.
Yeah.
So what's going on in the world now that might, because you know what I tell people is, I think, you know, right now you have COVID, and then you have elections, and then I think there's there's the media, the constant drone of the media. You know, it just seems like the perfect storm, whether you're a veteran or not a veteran. Just so many things going on. Why do you think you're struggling now, and what do you think needs to be done?
I'm not really sure why I'm struggling now. It's like there's this threshold of, like, say, having a nervous breakdown,
Right.
for instance. It could be all these little pieces adding up, and then this one little thing will send you over the edge.
Right. How do you ever? Because you talked about realizing, well, feeling that you were sent there underneath false pretenses.
Yes.
Are you bitter?
I was for a while, but I've gotten over that part. Because then I think about it, and I'm like, I really didn't go there for their purposes. I did, but I didn't. I really went there to keep the bad things from happening to my family, my loved ones.
And I think you've kind of implied in some ways you're actually a better person because you've experienced things.
My mind is definitely a lot more open than it used to be. Yeah.
And you've experienced friendship that maybe nobody else will, unless you've been in combat.
Right. There's a certain camaraderie, a certain bond.
Right. Yeah, they say there's nothing like the friendships you have in that's what are formed in combat. Do you stay in contact with a lot of your people?
Mostly through via Facebook. I mean, we are everywhere, all across the nation. So yeah, Facebook is the best way to
Do you ever get back to? You ever get together with any of them?
I haven't yet. I haven't. Every couple of years, my battalion does a get together. I have yet to make it, but I want to.
Yeah, I know. I've known people from other wars. It took them, Gene Tessier, Mr. Basketball from Derby. He was a combat veteran of Vietnam, and it took him decades to finally say, okay, I'm going to go to a reunion. Now he won't even miss a reunion because it took him that long before he felt he was ready, and he went, and there's no looking back now.
Right. I can only imagine all the good and the bad feelings, but mostly good at seeing your fellow brothers and sisters again.
Right. Yeah, things. I bet you'll be like a lot of the other veterans who I've interviewed who've gone to reunions. You'll pick up conversations that you were having, whatever, 10...
Or remember when? Yeah.
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 In the Northeast Kingdom, can we do better for veterans?
That's a really hard question because I feel like the veteran has to want to reach out. Like I said, I feel like we're kind of wired not to ask for help, not to look weak, not to feel weak.
Right.
And to show a different side, it's really, really, really hard.
Right. Well, I know another acquaintance of yours and mine, Sergeant Major retired John Wilson.
Yes.
John was saying, and I don't know if it's still the case, he said, in his era of being a soldier, a sign of weakness, including going to a counselor, might really derail your career. Now, is that the case now?
I got hurt from carrying all the gear, so I've had surgery on both feet. Yes, injury will completely derail your career. It'll basically put it in the toilet.
What about if you go for counseling?
Yeah, that's just worse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it still is.
Oh yeah, it's a big stigma. Yeah.
And they probably make it. They probably, I suspect, in this day and age, what they probably do is they probably say one thing but do another, as in like they say, oh no, it won't affect you, and maybe it does.
I know in my experience it really, really did. I hope nowadays they're not so close-minded about seeking help for their soldiers, because that just makes everything worse.
Do you wish you had stayed in or were able to stay in?
No. I saw enough of Iraq and enough ugliness to last me a long time.
Right. So you never went to Afghanistan?
No. My dad did.
Right.
I did not.
You've mentioned your friends and that you can really talk with. Even though your father went to Afghanistan, but he was in Kuwait too, right?
Kuwait, and they did missions up into Iraq.
Oh, so you have something that you have a stronger,
Yes.
the father-daughter relationship, at least from what I've seen, including my own daughter, it's a different dynamic, but you really share something with him.
Yeah, on multiple levels, in multiple ways, yeah.
So is he able to help you when you need help in a different way than, say, most fathers could?
Yes, and I think I can help him in a way that most daughters wouldn't be able to as well.
True. And how did he feel about seeing his daughter go off to war?
Well, that's why he put up his hand and said, "Yeah, I'll go," while I was in basic training, because he thought, "Hey, I got to go make it safe for you."
Right. Yeah. So what do you? We've talked about your struggles now, and as I said, it sounds to me like you do have a good support system, and you know enough to tap into it when you're struggling.
Usually, yes.
And do you think, what do you see for your future? Do you think you'll be continuing this journey and into the future?
Well, the only option is to continue or to quit, which we're trying to stop people from quitting.
Right. So is this, in other words, you see it as part of you. You're just trying to get through the best you can.
Yeah.
But and is this therapy for you right now? Coming on the show to talk about what you went through so you can help other people?
Yes, I think that's the big kicker right there. I came back knowing that I never wanted anybody to experience what I experienced. Then I decided, how am I supposed to help other people when I myself am still neither here nor there?
Right. Yeah, but I think that makes you so real. That's what makes my friend Winston so real. Winston went through a lot with his PTSD. He was a Newport police officer who got drummed off, and but he's so real. He's not. It's not theory. It's not book.
No, you're right.
Real.
Yes.
And I'm going to connect. I'm connected to it because you'd absolutely love Winston, because book learning is great, but sometimes you got to have a real face, and you're a real face, and you're very well spoken about it. You're very honest about your. Have you had people come to you to tap into your wisdom, say former battle buddies or other people?
A little bit, but I've also just been at a bar, desensitization, being around lots of people. You don't know what they're going to do. And I've ran into other people that have gone to combat, and they're having a full-on meltdown in the middle of the bar.
Have you been able to help?
I think I did a little.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there was back when I was growing up, there was a head-injured Vietnam veteran here who was prone to outburst, and he had some really serious issues. And that was back when Winston was a Newport police officer, and he could go right into that situation, and they both knew. Yeah. They both knew each other. They both understood.
Yeah.
They'd been in the same place, and boom.
It's a really hard thing to have gone through, but then to be able to help somebody, there's nothing like it. There really isn't. It's like, wow, I actually might have made his week a little better.
Right.
Or at least this experience that he's going through currently.
Right. Have you ever thought, you have your degree in psychology, have you considered becoming whether it be a VA counselor or some other type of counselor?
I had thought about it, but actually to be up here, to have like a master's degree in like counseling,
right,
you have to put up so much more money than what you'd be able to recoup, so you'd never be able to pay off your loans.
Right. Well, that's too bad, because I think there's such a I think you'd bring so much to the table.
Well, I actually did. I meant to mention this a little while ago. I actually had a counselor that was a civilian. He's like, I don't need to have had a broken arm to know how to fix it. And I told him, but you'd know what it felt like. And that you would be able to connect with your soldiers so much better.
Absolutely. So we have about 10 more minutes left. What more would you like to tell the listeners?
We talked about this earlier. You don't actually have to have been in combat or such a horrible situation to get PTSD. You just have to come into, say, contact with their stories.
Right.
That could be enough for some people to have the effects of PTSD. So you don't even have to have seen all the death and blood and guts and atrocities.
Yeah, I've
Any kind of contact with it can change a person. It does change a person.
Right. Do you think your generation of soldier, a veteran, are you more willing to talk about it than the older generations?
Oh, most definitely, yes.
Right. Because there was an old thought. If you talked about it, like it was a double-edged sword about talking about it. Well, if they talked about it, they probably didn't do it. They're telling somebody else's story.
Stuff that they don't say, which would be the more interesting stuff.
Right. But now there doesn't seem to be less. There seems to be less stigma.
Thank
between,
God.
Especially guys being able to talk, because I think the men of today are a little more. I think they're given a little more leeway about shedding a tear if they want to.
Yeah, they're human.
Right.
They're human.
Would you rejoin? If you knew today what you know now, would you have gone in the military?
Yes, I think it was something I needed to do.
Right. And if somebody came to you, a young person came to you and said, "I'm thinking about joining the military," what would you?
Join the Air Force. They get better pay, and if they have to stay in Army barracks, they get substandard living conditions pay. They get paid to live in Army barracks, so go Air Force.
I think my father was in the Air Force for 7 years before he retired from the National Guard. Maybe he was on to something there.
I didn't know until we had Air Force people staying in our barracks and they were being paid money because it was substandard housing.
Right. One thing we didn't touch upon, but you once on a previous show, you did say there are things, because you once commended how I interviewed you, is like sometimes when you do have people say things to you, they want to come out and say things. Oh, how many people did you kill? You said that's kind of like,
that's rude.
That's not the way to do it.
You would get a horrible reply from me.
What do you not say to somebody that have been to the in combat?
Did you watch anybody die? Did you ever have contact with the enemy?
Right.
Did you kill anybody?
Yeah.
Unless you know that person, then you'd probably have enough respect to not ask.
Right. But instead, if you want to provide that information, that's right.
That's
and that's
different.
What I'm saying. And,
yes.
Because if you, because I've done this, and usually.
Thank you.
Yeah, and people have told me, that people have told me things they've never told anybody else, and sometimes just getting it off their chest.
You're in a very unique position, yeah.
Right. I do have my degree in psychology.
Awesome.
But that isn't. I just like people.
Yep.
And I just appreciate people. I appreciate so many. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing. Here's a question. This is in the future. Vietnam veterans are now returning to Vietnam as some people say, we want to go back, and some of them go back for different reasons. Like Winston, back to him. If he wasn't now he wishes he'd gone back when he was well.
Mm-hmm.
to find a piece of himself that he lost there, basically. Would you ever, if everything ever gets settled there, would you ever return like the World War II generation have done, like the Vietnam veterans, and I suppose to a degree Korean War veterans? Would you want to go back?
That's a very, very good question. There was a television show where they had to recreate this whole city, and it was so lifelike enough that vets were actually going there. I forget which post it was on. It was probably Fort Hood even.
Right.
They made this city look exactly like one of the blocks in Iraq.
Right.
Let's just say Baghdad or
Right.
whatever, or a little town. Even that in itself was very peace-giving,
Right.
very cathartic. I think I might try that before going all the way over there, because yeah.
I can't recall his name. He was from Westfield. He came on my show because he wrote a book, because he had a different experience with Iraq that you would probably appreciate. He lived as a civilian in Iraq, as an American, for years, as a member of a group, a humanitarian group. So he was there before, during, and then I believe he stayed on for a while. It got kind of tricky to stay on, but
Yeah.
I suspect he would say that it wasn't all for naught, because he talked about after toppling Saddam Hussein, suddenly, he said these mud huts, he said they were sprouting up satellite antennas, and he said suddenly they became, because he said parts of the country was like living in the Stone Ages.
Yes.
And he said freedoms really did start coming to the country, because he's written a book about just the before, during, and I believe to some degree after. And as I said, living there wasn't very easy during the war as a civilian.
Well, no, we took out their infrastructure, so it must have been really hard. And I can completely understand why the Iraqis could take us or leave us.
Right.
We made their lives hard.
Right.
We were supposed to win their hearts and minds, but we made it hard for them.
Right.
So I completely understand how and why they would not want us there and be mad at us. But that was something I never even thought to the freedoms. I didn't actually see that. But I did see the mud huts.
Right.
Made out of mud and poo and straw.
Yeah.
An old woman outside sweeping her dirt to make it more neat.
What I'm going to do is I'll try to find that show and send you a link to it, and because his was a non-military perspective to just life in Iraq during that time period.
I bet you that is really interesting.
Right. Okay. Any final words? And you're always welcome to come back on, because I think you're I think if there's such a thing, you're a rock star of PTSD, in the sense of you have so much to offer the world, and when you're down and you're struggling, just remember you have a lot to offer. You do, and just remember that.
So I guess I want to say, if you're out there and you're hurting, reach out. I know we are hardwired not to stiff upper lip and everything, but just reach out. Tell somebody, tell anybody that you're hurting, and that maybe they'll just listen and you'll feel better, or you might actually get some help that you need. But always reach out. Suicide is so final.
All right. Thanks for coming on the show, and if I can do anything for you in the future, just reach out, because that's advice that you have to keep taking yourself.
Yes, it is. Yes, I have to remind myself of it. Yes.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.